Welcome into another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, SJ Munoz with you once again here to talk the world of sports. And March Madness will get into full effect for us here this week, so we're going to have some fun talking about that. We'll recap our conference tournament picks here for you, and then, of course, dive into that bracket and start to try to prognosticate a little bit here for you and maybe give you some good plays along the way here for these early days or things to kind of keep your eye out for. SJ, is always fun. We talked about how, this is a great time of year, and now we kind of get that anticipation built up because the conference tournament's taken care of. Bracket has been released as of yesterday as we're recording here on Monday, and we get ready for those big 2 days coming up here at the end of the week.
Yeah, it's one of those weeks you always have, circled on the calendar and kind of counting down the days. And admittedly, I think I've mentioned before on the show, I wasn't exactly so excited about, a jump from 64 to 68 teams. But at the same time, it's nice now we're getting going tomorrow instead of having to wait till Thursday, because that was almost like Christmas when you were a kid. It was hard to make it through those 4 days until the game started, and then it was like overload. So at least, any more days with games is good with me. So let's get going and ready to, like you said, get some good picks and hit some covers like always.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll have some fun with it. I hope that you make some good plays along the way, too, as well. And we're going to talk a little bit, too, how you can get involved also here as we move through the program, because we certainly would like you to have you do that as well. As we get rolling, though, we always talk about the fine beverages we're sipping back on. SJ, what's fueling your March Madness here this week?
Well, I'm definitely not a one of those vibes, universe, energy type guys, But having said that, at the same time, I do love a good theme, or just kind of keep with what's going up in my world. That's kind of usually how I make my picks here. Like we said, the weather sometimes. Shoot, I was drinking those green beers yesterday, and I was honestly a little disappointed in the place I stopped off at. Had some damn good food, but no St. Patrick's Day drink specials, which I thought was rather odd considering the type of holiday. That's essentially what it is, a drinking man's holiday. But what have you? So I just, my own green beer. Long story short, I guess I need to get into what I'm drinking tonight. My Nebraska ball boys are heading down to Memphis, so I figured I'd grab a little Southern Comfort. I'm hoping I don't need the bad kind of Southern Comfort after the game on Friday. So maybe just a little bit of a foreshadowing. Maybe I'll be polishing off that bottle here come Friday night.
There you go. Walking in Memphis with the SoCo in your hand. Hopefully you don't have to get one of those. When I was down there before on Beale Street, they have one of the places, famous drink is the Walk Me Down, because it's supposed to walk you down to the ground. Hopefully you're not needing one of those after the game.
If I'm doing that, it's in a celebratory mode.
Yeah, exactly.
Not in a misery.
So that's a good little mix up there. I like the change of pace. I pulled this one out here. I bought a few of these. Usually it's kind of odd. Anyway, I guess you probably experience this too. And you go to different stores, and they always seem to have a little bit different influx of something or other. There's always some kind of, maybe brand that you like or brewery you like that you end up seeing a few of them show up on the shelf somewhere where maybe it doesn't normally the other place you normally go. So I was out of town. Always like to stop at a different wine and spirits location, and they always happen to have something that I'm kind of been searching for. But this is one from the fine folks at Confluence Brewing Company. I know we've said kind of over and over again that we're not huge IPA guys, but this is always one that I do like just because it's got a really good balance, and it's the Des Moines IPA. And it's the double dry hopped version, so it gives it a little extra kind of. And it's not necessarily making it more, when you think of like the too intense type stuff, it's not necessarily that. It just kind of, I think, smooths it out a little bit. But yeah, it gives it a great flavor. I do like this one, and it's even better, I think, when you get the double dry hop. So enjoying that. And of course, the fine folks here in Iowa have plenty to be happy about as far as when the basketball is concerned. So, there might be a few folks drinking this, whether they're watching the Clones or even the Bulldogs here this weekend, and they're in Omaha. So, it should be a lot of fun. We'll get into that bracket here a little bit further as we get going, but let's start off with those conference tournaments and take a look at kind of how we shaped up and what we kind of saw coming, and then maybe we'll obviously talk about the results as well. What surprised us here a little bit. But we'll start off. I'll start off here with the games that ended on Saturday. The first one at the top of my list, of course, is that Big 12 championship that happened right there in your backyard there at the T-Mobile Center. And Iowa State, my clones, laid the smackdown on old Kelvin Sampson, sent his butt packing back to Houston. 69-41 was the final. The thing that shocked me the most about the game, I really had a good feeling about it just because we all know that Iowa State fans are notorious for traveling and being there in full force, and you knew they were going to have a huge advantage against a team like Houston that's a lot further away to try to make it there. So that home atmosphere, I had a feeling was going to kind of push them over the edge, but the way that they did it and the fact that you're kind of waiting around to see if Houston was even going to break like 35 for a good chunk of that second half was just incredible. They had one heck of a poor day as far as the offense is concerned, and it snowballed. You could tell that they kind of gave up on the game, certainly there in the second half, but certainly was impressed with the way that the Clones made that one look.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't mind too much, but it was. I was hoping for a little bit more competitive game, at least. For it seemed about halfway. Midway through the game or halftime or what have you is pretty much a done deal. And I know the score was, but just the way it was going, this couldn't really do no wrong. And just driving around town earlier in the day, just passing through downtown, and I noticed Houston had bought a billboard actually just on the other side, kind of just north of Union Station there off of 35. And I said, oh, man, they're not messing around. I might have some fans here. And then that was about the best thing that happened that day for them. So, I was hoping for a more competitive game. But we kind of – that was the two teams we were locked in on to win it all. It was one or the other. So, you kind of had the 50-50 there. And I also had the Iowa State as a pretty solid dark horse and even, made a little bit of coin off them, so that was nice to see because went ahead and took them as I guess, whether like plus 350 or something when I got it, which seemed a little long for me, but I'll take it. That was a good bet, obviously.
Yeah, that's a really good number, especially for a team that had played well throughout the season and played with the top teams in the conference before. You'd think that number would have been a little bit smaller, but they just the way that they started the week, I thought, man, they turned the corner, they set the tone. They had just lost to K-State, turned around and just thumped them in the opening round, and you thought, okay, this is the team that you're going to see at this tournament this week. And, that momentum builds, obviously, when you're there and you get those fans riled up day after day. It just kind of, that momentum comes your direction, and they certainly took full advantage of it. And, from a fan's perspective, yeah, fun to watch. From a casual observer's perspective, yeah, no, it was a stinker. It was not something fun to see, but the Clones got it done. And like you said, yeah, we were both on them. Our dark horses that we were kind of looking at, you mentioned Iowa State. You kind of had mentioned KU just on a flyer if they were to get well, but they were obviously so banged up that didn't matter for them. They got knocked out right away. But I had BYU as my kind of dark horse team, and they kind of let me down. They had a little bit of I guess one decent game, and then just kind of petered out after that. But the top seeds played well, and it went according to the seeds to get to that championship, and then the Cyclones knock off number one ranked Houston. So that sets up something that I'll have to touch on a little bit later on when it comes to as far as the NCAA tournament bracket is concerned, because I think there's some things to be upset about there, but we'll move on. Another game that was played on Saturday that would have been a major conference tournament championship would have been the final in the Big East, and the UConn Huskies were 73-57 winners over Marquette, so they got it done as we kind of both expected. That was one that we thought would be the chalk, and UConn again I think kind of showed why maybe they probably have been the most consistent team all season long.
Yeah, like you said, not a lot of surprise there. Just kind of ran through it a little bit. Of course, there's some moments here or there. Like honestly, the game I remember most from that tournament was that Providence Marquette deal. That kind of went down to the wire. I don't know if you caught much of that on. I think it was Friday night. That was a pretty hotly contested game there with a buzzer beater, and then it wasn't a buzzer beater. But as far as the champion goes, yeah, we just kind of it was hard to pick against them, and in this case, we were right on that one.
Yeah, so that was a pretty good pick on that front. The other tournament ending on Saturday was the ACC, and the North Carolina Tar Heels ended up falling to what was kind of the Cinderella of conference tournament season, NC State. They win 5 games in 5 days to win the ACC title. 84-76 was the championship score, and yeah, I mean, hey, sometimes a team catches a heater, and they knew they needed it in order to get pretty much into the tournament. They had to win the whole thing almost, and that's what they did. They went out and got it done. You know, their coach had already, I think, made an agreement that he was kind of on the way out, and then, you know, it's in his contract that he basically gets automatically to stay if they win it. So, yeah, a big turnaround. That's got to be a good feeling for a team like that for sure.
It's gonna be really amazing. You just think about the difficulty of just winning 5 games in 5 days, period, and then to do it in a pretty solid conference at that is just kind of. I know you always think like, oh, maybe somebody get on a run and we talk about it, but it happens very very few times, and they're I mean looked unbeatable. They probably. I mean, of course, you want a couple of days to recover and all that, but they're probably thinking the sooner they can get on the court, the better, because you don't want that momentum to fade because they're obviously just kind of hitting on all cylinders right now, and just you just want to keep that carried over and don't want to sit on the sidelines too long.
Yeah, exactly. They want to keep this thing rolling. They had really good performances from a lot of guys. Mohamed Diarra was 11 points, 14 rebounds. Their big double in that championship matchup, and then DJ Burns, another guy that was kind of a key cog for them all the way, had a good performance with 20 points, and then 29 coming from DJ Horn. So they really had some guys step up and just play their best basketball when they needed them to, and that's what's fun to watch. That was a pretty cool run. Like you said, it's going to be interesting to see how tough it is for them to kind of keep that moving forward. I don't know. It's going to be awfully tough to do it in the dance, but man, they made one heck of a run to get there. Now, with North Carolina, certainly I think it's disappointing that they didn't win that game. You kind of thought that they looked like a team that was really fully in control the way they were playing at the end of the year, and kind of the way they took care of Duke in that last game they had. I thought that, man, this is a team that looks like it could win it all. But I wouldn't discredit them either. I mean, you had one bad game against a team that's really, really hot. I don't think that you kind of saw the full, kind of piss and vinegar towards the end of that game that you normally see out of North Carolina if they really were whole hog on that thing. And you might have thought towards the end they were kind of thinking, well, the next step's what's important to us. Maybe we just don't worry about today.
Yeah, I mean, in the long run, of course, the big scheme, I guess, a better way to put it is they there was not as much to gain or lose either way. They were kind of set where they were set, and what was, I mean, of course, you're out there, you always want to win another championship would be nice for your trophy case, but I don't know if even if it had their A game, it still might have been a tough test just the way that NC State was playing, which kind of seems hard to say, but sometimes you just get on that momentum, and that's why we see teams make a run like Florida Atlantic and VCU a few years back, and even Florida Gulf Coast when they went on their run. It's just that's kind of the magic of March and why we all get geared up and just kind of can't wait for things to get going because it happens, and that part of it happens often. I'm not the 5 games in 5 days is kind of absurd, but you've seen teams win 2 or 3 games, even get to the Elite Eight when they had no business being there on paper, at least.
Yeah. I will say too, your one of your dark horse pick there in Pitt didn't play too bad in that tournament. They were kind of one that was on a run there. I thought maybe, hey, this might be looking good for you, but they played all right. They were right in it up until the end of their last game. So then we moved on. There's another championship Saturday in the Pac-12, the last hurrah, I guess, for the Pac-12. They had their official Pac-12 network sign-off, I guess, there at the end, where the gal had a pretty good comment at the end of that. But the two teams that we probably didn't think were going to be playing in that game. The way it turned out, Oregon gets the win, and especially the winner. 75-68, they beat Colorado in the final. I had Colorado as kind of my dark horse in that tournament, and I wasn't overly surprised that they had found a way to get there. But I was surprised that Arizona kind of got knocked out and didn't end up being the team that walked away from this thing. Again, I don't know if you take a whole ton away from them, how you analyze that part of it. But Oregon certainly rose to the occasion and played well and got themselves, much better position, I guess, for the tournament the way that it turned out for them.
Yeah, I guess if you're, a fan of Arizona or even North Carolina in that case, maybe the late season kind of lack of motivation, I guess would be a way to characterize it. Maybe makes you feel a little nervous and unsettled heading into the tournament. Where if you have a bad day now, season's over. There's no coming back from this. So that on that end, it might make you a little bit worried. But same deal. They didn't lose anything, and like you said, and then maybe they ended up in a better spot after all, and then maybe got a few extra days of rest on top of it. So, but yeah, I was just glad. I mean, I know they still snuck in, but I was glad Colorado didn't take that. I don't like to see them get any type of trophies or accolades. So I was all Ducks that night.
Yeah, it's not a university that's won any favor here in the last few couple of years, that's for sure. But yeah, so interesting. It also sets up another interesting scenario in the tournament that we'll talk about there with Oregon also. So that was the ones that happened there on Saturday. So then we move over to Sunday and we finish it off with the other couple big conference tournament champions, and the SEC was one of those. The Auburn Tigers get up and win the championship. 86-67, they beat Florida, and a team that certainly looks like they've turned into a pretty dangerous one. They were your dark horse in that tournament, SJ, and certainly turned out to be a team that is playing well at the right time.
Yeah, once Kentucky went down, I was kind of kicking myself for being a coward, and I did want to pick them, but they hadn't given you like the consistency at least to feel confident about it, and that's how they played in that tournament was kind of more of what you thought they could be consistently throughout the year. They just hadn't done it yet. So just I don't know. This is what happens. Is this like if you want to say a light switch goes off, or just I don't know, just everything. It's kind of like one of those be the ball type things. Everything just falls into place and you can't miss a shot, or that adrenaline kicks in even more knowing what's on the line. But yeah, they did look really good, and they're kind of like that's kind of what I thought. Like how Tennessee ended up kind of being, thought about this season. I would have flipped, and I thought Auburn would have had that type of season this year.
Yeah, and I guess they kind of put themselves in that light here at this point, right at the end of the season. Tennessee was getting a ton of love, and obviously they were the one that maybe was the biggest disappointment in all the conference tournaments, getting knocked out as early as they did. Did not play well. If you would have asked, I think anybody that was like a major analyst of college hoops that Tennessee and Kentucky would both not be in the SEC championship, not a single one would have told you that. So definitely surprising there the way that panned out. And it's going to be, I think, intriguing to see how that league stacks up come tournament time, because maybe we were undervaluing all those teams a little bit. I think there may be some more kind of competition there than we think on a week-to-week basis, and especially when it comes from an offensive standpoint. Certainly seems like a lot of teams that can really put up points in a hurry. Whether or not they can put the defense together to stop somebody that's pretty good is going to be the question. But yeah, they can put up points, and they all did that in big fashion during that tournament. So Auburn, the winner. Then we moved on and finished it up with the Big Ten championship, and it was Illinois, who, of course, had to make a wild comeback to beat your team and really played hard down the stretch of that one. I'm sure you were not too fond of that. But then from there on, that's when they kind of caught their stride and they started playing better offensive basketball. Put up 93 in the final win against Wisconsin, 93-87, which I guess in the grand scheme of my mind is what was kind of interesting, because you don't think of Illinois-Wisconsin as being a let's light them up the scoreboard type of game. It never has been, but these two teams certainly were doing that, and they were kind of going blow for blow. It was a fun game to watch there for a while, but you did feel like Illinois kind of had enough control of it there, especially towards the tail end to get it done. But another team that looks like they could be a little bit dangerous if they find that same offense come the big dance.
Yeah, hitting the stride at the right time for sure, and maybe it'll be a little different when they don't have the same type of officiating crews with knowing Shannon and that his sort of game. So we'll see how that goes there. And I mean, like I said, I'm never a blame the refs guy, but there's some history there as a track record. It's not just a one game type of deal. So we'll see how that plays out in the tournament. But they earned the championship. You got to give them credit where it's due. And like you said, there's no way. I'm trying to think. I know I looked at it, but I can't even remember exactly. So don't quote me on this. But I don't even think that total could have been more than 175. Maybe 180 tops with or 165. I mean 170 with for that Illinois Wisconsin game. There's no way. I'm guessing there's more in the 150s for
Yeah,
the over under.
it
So
was
you would have
146 and a
smashed that
half.
number, yeah,
Yeah.
because they were that was an NBA score damn near.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And of course, I mean, again, it's surprising that the team that we thought would probably be there in Purdue, they got knocked out in overtime there against Wisconsin. A good game, and obviously Wisconsin also kind of hit their stride at the right time too. But it makes you a little bit leery. I mean, Purdue's always been one of those teams where it's like
Yeah.
they make you nervous almost every time out. You know that they're really good, and you know that they can win every game. But you also get that feeling that they're so easily tripped up if you hit them on the right day, and I think that makes probably people nervous going into the tournament picking the bracket too.
Yeah, speaking of history, they've made that they're known for that is just maybe falling a little bit short. So I guess be leery when you're filling out your brackets and just kind of the recent history because I believe I mean lost as a 15 for sure and or two of 15 for sure in the last few years and I swear they were knocked out as a number one seed in recent memory, but I need to look that up and get confirmation on that. I don't want to be throwing stats willy nilly. This ain't the SEC network.
Yeah, certainly a team that has history of kind of letting folks down and being in those spots when it comes tournament time where they've lost. Yeah, you mentioned that. Well, it was last year they lost to Fairleigh Dickinson in that 115 or that 116 matchup. 63-58 was the final in that one. Zach Edey had 21 points, 15 rebounds, but didn't get a shot in the closing 9+ minutes of the game of that one. So interesting the way that panned out. And the 2 seasons before that, they had lost to a double-digit seed. So yeah, they built up a little track record here of not performing well when it comes to the big moment.
Yeah, I guess if you want to be glass half full guy, they're due for a performance that lives up to the seed. So maybe that's the way you look at it. But yeah, it'd be hard to. Yeah, I can see where you'd be a little cautious with that number one seed by their name.
Yeah, and we both obviously took Purdue to win it. You had Ohio State as your dark horse. I had Nebraska, so I really don't feel too bad about that. The way Nebraska had a good lead on the team that won it, just kind of let it slip away. So, but that's how those major conference tournaments went, and kind of a look at how our picks went. Of course, if you were following along with us on Twitter here throughout the week, we were throwing different games at you throughout kind of the whole weekend, and really, actually, I felt pretty dang good about the end of the week because some of them I were throwing out. I had a couple of days where I hit like both picks that I had out there. Even yesterday, I had the Duquesne and UAB, and they came through for me. I ended up putting that one in together for a little 2-teamer just for the hell of it because it was kind of smaller games and. Yeah, won me a little money. So I think both of us really had some good ones that we kind of hit there throughout the week. Makes you feel pretty good heading into the tournament.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta, the more the better. In some cases, obviously, it's easier when you're locked into something, especially with these conference tournaments, and even with myself. I mean, in addition to college, I love to do the props, and that's for me. It's easier to trend, find some data points and trends on that, but just because there's a little bit more consistency with it, and you can also obviously combine stats and things of that sort. So yeah, follow along. We're getting quite a bit of info out there on the daily basis lately.
Yeah, and that it gives you some ideas maybe of things that you could play. Kind of just what's going on in our minds, what we're kind of looking at, or what we see that we notice, and maybe that helps you make a play. Whether or not. And then of course, if it gets to the point where we're on a little bit of a bad run, then you can go ahead and just say, well, that guy's an idiot. I'm going to pick the other way of that, and maybe that works out for you too. So that's what it's all about, having some fun.
Yeah. Either way, it's just. Like you said, it's all about that momentum. Just like with NC State, we're trying to be like the Wolfpack, but some days we end up being Arizona or friggin' Purdue. So that's just the way it goes.
Yep, not every day's a Cinderella. So we'll get into the tournament and the brackets here in just a moment. Before we do that, I did want to kind of bring up another little topic here, and it certainly relates to the school that you have always been a fan of. News out this week that Nebraska athletic director Trev Alberts is now going to be the athletic director for the Texas A&M Aggies, and it was one of those deals where, well, not really anybody knew about it face to face until the news was pretty much broken by the media, anyways. And then a post thought email came out from the man himself, and doesn't look good. It certainly is an odd situation, and a lot brings a lot of questions to a lot of people's minds, and I'm sure they're not too happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's several ways to look at it. I guess my thing is, I just even with pro sports teams I like or whoever, like I'm about the team, the university, the entity, whatever it may be. So that's kind of like number one. Just in general and just in even societal, not to get on too big of a damn soapbox here, but seems to be a little bit too much of a worship of an individual gets us in these situations you may find yourself in now. I understand. I'm not as locked in as I had been in the past, being that I don't live in the state anymore. So there's some of the news, and especially with the kind of that administrative type thing, or even if you want to call it political, whatever. I don't follow that day to day just because it's not covered here locally, and I don't have the time nor the interest to dig it up and read about legislative issues or what have you. So when it comes to that, I'm not gonna act like I know exactly what's going on. It does sound like from a pretty good chunk of the the fan base or even the media that covers it, there are some issues in the I guess you call it administrative, president, chancellor, governor, all that type stuff. Some issues there that maybe they didn't see eye to eye with him, or he wanted some different power structure. I know they've been with an interim president there at the university for quite some time, so that might have been a sticking point as well. But I guess the thing that kind of sticks out is to me mostly, and since I'm not going to be all up in arms, I'm sure it sucks that he left the way he did, and maybe it hurts a little bit more being an alum, a pretty successful athlete at the university. Kind of, you thought maybe you wouldn't have to worry about this being someone that's all in. I mean, it's a different position, but I can assume that. And for the fact that when Hoiberg left Iowa State, he was good, taking a step up.
Yeah.
But I can see how you maybe feel some of the same kind of, I don't know if you want to call it betrayal or just maybe some of that. It was more of a little emotional of a reaction. I think that's what kind of caught some people off guard. And in this case, at best, it's a lateral move. I mean, we've joked and made fun of Texas A&M and their political issues and things of that sort. I can't imagine if it was the reason he left there. How can you imagine that's a better situation or setup than what you're leaving? That's kind of the main things that stuck out to me is the way it was handled, doing it through email and where you're going. It really doesn't make sense of there being a reason to do this. If you're gonna if he was gonna be a Big Ten commissioner or move into something with the playoff committee, I think people maybe be like, it sucks he's leaving because he's one of us, quote unquote. But just to leave to do kind of the same job in a similar setting or maybe it's not a better job based upon all the issues they have. I think that's kind of what caught people off guard and made people pissed off and upset about it.
Yeah. Well, and I guess from what we've seen in the past, we certainly know it's a university that's willing to throw money around. So, whether or not that was a motivator, we don't know. Certainly, it's probably a piece of it, a piece of the puzzle, because it would probably take a lot to draw somebody away that was an AD at a school that they went to. You'd think, so that's what makes it weird. And then also, it does make you wonder a little bit if there is going to be a little bit more fallout from some of this scenario that we've had with the women's basketball deal. His name's obviously attached to that, and maybe he didn't handle things properly, and he kind of knew that. Maybe there's more writing on the wall than we know about. That was kind of my first thought when I saw that. And maybe we'll never know. Maybe that gets swept under the rug with him. Send the trash out with him. But but
yeah, gotta be something bigger, just the way it looks, because and like you said, there's backdoor dealings and money, and so is the exchanges. I mean, I know he just got an extension that paid him more, and the buyout for him to leave is A&M or whoever is fronting the money is going to be owing Nebraska about $4 million. So and I know that's not a ton of money to them, but it just seems like it doesn't add up on face value. Doesn't make sense. So all you can assume is there's more to it. And I know the one of the common theories going around was that he's kind of run away from this lawsuit. Well, I mean, you can't run away from a lawsuit. I mean, whether
Yeah,
you're the
yeah, true.
president of, he could be working at the damn Dollar Tree tomorrow, and his name's still on the lawsuit.
Yeah,
So it really doesn't matter. I mean, you might not want the smear campaign or to be publicly ostracized in a state that said that you cared about and that sort of thing. But it's not going away just because you move states or get a different job.
true. Well, and certainly you would think that A&M would have looked into that too, or they would have known kind of what the scenario is. You'd hope.
Yeah, you would hope so for their case,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if not, oh well. And
Well,
then on course on top of it, one thing that the men's team is playing in basketball, haha, good one in the bracket, and then the women's team is playing A&M as well. So obviously, that wasn't an accident. There
no.
was I'm fine with it. The only thing that sucks about it is it might distract a little bit from the actual like the accomplishment
Yeah.
of the team and be like a sideshow. But oh well, what are you gonna do? Just go out and win, and then you can have scoreboard for at least a little bit on them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we certainly know that the committee has a history of trying to provide some of these storylines behind the scenes with the tournament, and that's what they're doing here, obviously.
Well, and even a team I'm not very fond of is if they win, they'll be playing Oregon and their former coach in the second round as well. So it's that those things don't happen by mistake. So
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. It's yeah, very true. So yeah, interesting scenario. We'll kind of see, I guess, how that all ends up playing out in the long run, and how things maybe change there. You mentioned something too when we were talking. I don't know. I guess I don't want to carry on forever, but I do think it's an interesting point to bring up just in the athletic director role in general. Maybe it gets played up as something that's way more important than perhaps it really is. Obviously, it doesn't have near the impact on the field as we always make it out to be. That person is just somebody else's boss. They're not making the play calls. They're not signing guys. They try to find a right coach. That's their job. But most of it's kind of you're doing a lot of PR. You're doing a lot of glad handing with guys to try to get them to support the university and boosters and keep them happy and those types of things. So it certainly is a lot of that. Now, I'm not saying that the right guy doesn't have a big impact when it comes to that kind of stuff, because I can say that about the guy that's in Ames, the team that I follow, and Jamie Pollard. He did a lot to, at least to raise money to change things and build things. So, that does make a difference. But yeah, when it comes to the on the field stuff, that always gets way more misconstrued than it really should.
yeah, and there was you kind of always saying this guy's a good athletic director or this guy's a bad one. And if you ask somebody like, well, tell me what a good athletic director is, they're not going to be able to tell you directly. So that kind of lends to your point. I'm with you there. It's it's an important part of the athletic department, but it's not the end all be all. Just like with anything, I mean, to me, I think the best ones is you find a guy that fits kind of the setup that you have and your program and kind of can recruit to that area type of thing, and then you just get the hell out of the way and let them do their job, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, whatever. It's kind of that maybe that's part of some of these problems is the micromanaging and or thinking you're more important than what you really are. It's not it is an important job, but it's not the most important job. I think working together as a athletic department between all the coaches with the administration, even the academic people, the recruiting people, everything is kind of where you get that happy median. It's not all about one guy, and maybe some guys want it to be all about them, and that's why they move on to greener pastures, if you will. But yeah, it's funny when these situations come up, because it's never for me it's not a, oh god, panic, and
Yeah, end
going
of
to
the world.
shit, we
Yeah,
might as well just shut down the damn university.
yeah,
That's, to me, it's it sucks, whatever. It's kind of more of like something that you wouldn't want aired out in public. It's more like I don't even want to call it an embarrassment, but more just like a I don't know. It's kind of like keep your stuff in the closet and don't air out your dirty
yeah,
laundry type of thing.
yeah.
So maybe that's kind of more of the issue that a lot of people are dealing with and don't kind of know how to handle that.
Well, and yeah, the professionalism side of it too. You'd think you'd have the respect to talk to everybody that you worked with and hired and that kind of thing to tell them, but is what it is. Yeah, yeah. I mean, in a scenario, let's say Tom Osborne went to go be the AD at Oklahoma. Yeah, that'd be a big deal. But most of the time, yeah, it doesn't really damn matter. So, yeah. we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, they'll be searching now and trying to find somebody that maybe fits that mold. I know that the guy that's the school I like is one that they've kind of had their eye on before, and maybe he considers that. I have no idea, but it will be interesting to see who they kind of to slide into that position and move forward from there. But like you said, at the end of the day, I think if your name's in the headlines a lot, then you're doing it wrong. So that's kind of the main end of the story. So that's that scenario. We'll, of course, keep eyes on those kind of headlines here as we move on throughout, the off season for college football. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more shakeup on that kind of front as we move forward. But right now, we're worried about hoops and we're worried about the big dance. Had those teams announced, obviously, after games wrapped up on Sunday. Just one overall, I think, thing I want to throw out there as we get into this is I understand from the selection committee standpoint that they have an extremely hard job. You're going to piss some people off because that's what always happens. There's going to be teams that you could argue are deserving in a lot of different ways that get left out. But that's what makes it a great tournament because most of these teams are pretty good. They deserve to be there and play in it. But one thing that I think is kind of odd, and maybe part of this is the timing too, but it's become pretty evident here these last couple of years that these conference tournaments really don't mean a damn thing. They mean something to the team that wins it because we know they get that automatic bid. But as far as like how a team looked, it especially this year as an example, didn't change anything. I mean, if you would have done this before those tournaments started and played it out, aside from the ones that were maybe a surprise, I don't think anybody would have thought differently of how it actually then played out on paper. Now, I think that there does need to be more emphasis on the regular season and that impact. I agree with that. But I think you have to take a little bit of weight into how a team is playing here at the end of the season. A team, obviously like in an NC State that goes on a huge run like that. Say they were a team that was already 5 games better than they were heading into that tournament. Then that's when you're talking about moving up seeds and those kinds of things. But it doesn't seem like that really happens. Now, I think part of that, too, is they don't have the opportunity to make that decision. They've got most of this mapped out before those damn things even start because you don't have time. I mean, you just can't do it. And especially when some of those championship games are being played on the day that you're doing it. I mean, hell, that Big Ten game gets done and it's like an hour later that they're announcing the bracket. So, maybe that's something that needs to change too to make that a little bit more accountable. I don't know, but it is a little frustrating, I think.
Yeah, a lot of it's like you said, is done for TV, and I think that's kind of the bad part about the exposure and everything being out there so quick and the instant reaction is that, like you said, it's done before. It's most of it's been decided. Of course, if you have somebody that wasn't going to make it in a championship on a late Saturday, early Sunday, and they end up pulling the upset, so then you got to kind of revamp things. But I'm not saying it's easy, and it's like there's 64 teams of any bracket is a little bit tricky, but sometimes I do wonder if as much thought goes into it as we think it does.
Yeah,
it just doesn't seem like it. It's almost like reminds me of like the kids menu when you go sit down, just have a bunch of crayons and you're just drawing shit and playing tic-tac-toe on one side and doing a word search on the other, and then oh look, there's a bracket, because a lot of it just doesn't make sense. That's what I mean, there's got to be some type of criteria they go off of, but more times than not, it doesn't add up. And you think with all the the analytics, the what is it, Lenardi and some Bart guys out there now these days, and who's the other one that's big? Anyway,
Ken Palm,
Ken Palm, on and on and on.
Yeah.
Get these guys involved, because that's at least they have a formula they could show you, and you could look and say, okay, maybe I don't agree with it, but it's a numbers-based system, and there's not this dramatization or soap opera storyline wannabe where you get these type of matchups with former coaches or former players or teams that hate each other and all that type of thing. Like, it's a little bit, and at least you can live with it. Maybe, like I said, you might still not agree with it, but at least there's a rhyme and reason to it, rather than just trying to get as many viewers as you can. Because I know everybody, of course, you want the viewers, but if you have the best teams playing in the best positions possible, they're going to be better games, and you're still going to get the ratings.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, that's the way it should be looked at. But like you said, it is definitely not the way it always seems to play out when we're looking at it from an outside perspective. And yeah, you get these storylines, and it's pretty obvious that hey, they were trying to do this. They're trying to set up this matchup, or they wanted to make that because they thought it'd be fun. And yeah, maybe it works for TV, whatever. But it certainly is frustrating. Obviously, I say this because as a fan of a team that just won a championship and I thought looked pretty damn good doing it here this weekend, didn't get any love for that at all. I mean, they end up getting stuck in the same region as the overall number one seed, which, at the end of the day, you have to beat everybody to win the thing. I get that. That's fine. But the criteria usually is supposed to be, the top two seed can't be in the same region as the overall number one. And so obviously they thought Iowa State wasn't that, whereas the AP Top 25 comes out today and Iowa State's number 4. So explain how that pans out to me, because it just doesn't make sense. And I guess the unfortunate part of that is, no matter what team it was in that spot, usually I think you're trying to give teams like that a shot, the best shot they can have at a Final Four. That's kind of what I'm, a little bit perturbed about, because that's always the pinnacle. Everybody wants to say, they made a Final Four. So that's when it stinks for teams, I think, when you get matched up like in that scenario. Now, it'd be different if it was a year or two where there was a team that was absolutely dominant and you'd be like, oh, we're screwed because we're in that bracket. I don't think any team's like that this year, but to me, if the one you wouldn't want to play is the one that they got stuck up against. So it's funny how that just kind of got swept aside, I think, in this scenario.
Yeah, I've never been locked in as far as like trying to get in the committee's head or thinking like, oh, like the prognostication as far as seeding. But when Iowa State won, I don't remember if I text you or not, but I know after the fact I did. But I when they won the Big 12, I was like, oh shoot, they're going to be a 1 seed now, and that was just just from years of watching basketball. I don't have any. I'm not an analytics guy. I don't have any knowledge. I don't talk to people because I just want to watch the games. I don't care about that crap. But anyways, like I just thought. I was like, oh, they got to be a number 1 now. So when they weren't, I was a little bit surprised about that. So just going back to what I said before, it'd be nice if there was some type of tangible criteria to at least go off of. But it's not going to change. If anything, we're going the other way. It used to seem like it was more about a little bit more based on the court, 10 years ago or so, and it's going the opposite direction, or maybe football is going the other way. So I guess just something we just have to adjust to as it transforms into perhaps a bigger tournament. Who knows? That's some of the talk. I mean, when these bigger entities are floating this stuff around, it's not really to they're not really asking, they're telling you basically.
Yeah. Usually they're smoke fire kind of thing. Yeah. The interesting thing too about all of this and how it shakes up with the seeding the way it goes is you kind of get the feeling that things have been pinpointed when they say that going into the weekend, like, oh, these teams are guaranteed locks to be whatever. It's like, okay, how do you really know that? Yeah. But in their defense, I will say this has probably been one of the toughest years, because you did have 4 teams that won conference tournaments that kind of what they call bid stealers, where they were teams that weren't going to make the field, made a run and won their tournament to kind of, make it tougher on them. So that does make it difficult. I get that part of it as far as getting the whole field kind of locked down and pinned down. And I think too, just from what we've seen all season long, parity has become more and more of a thing. We're seeing a lot of teams that are kind of fighting up there. I just thought it was interesting as I was looking through the bracket and seeing the records, and even looking at the top 25 today. It's pretty. In the past, you always felt like there was probably a good, maybe even 10 teams. That top 10 where they maybe had 5 losses or more, but there's only 3 of them right now that are close to that. And everybody else down the line has 7 or more. So it just that kind of season. So it should make for a fun tournament. That's certainly what we'll hope. So anyways, that's kind of some of the outside topic kind of things. As far as the brackets are concerned, let's just kind of give you a little bit of a peek at it here, and then we'll kind of go through each region, who we think is coming out of the regions here. So we'll start in the East, since I've already complained about it and told you who's there. UConn, the overall number 1 seed. They're at the top there. They're joined by the other high seeds would be Auburn at the 4, Illinois as the 3. Iowa State as the 2. The one little fun storyline, obviously, that they threw in there was they put the Drake Bulldogs in that 7-10 matchup, so it could be a Drake-Iowa State second-round matchup that they're kind of aiming for a storyline there potentially. Other teams in the bracket are BYU, UAB, Florida Atlantic, and then you've got Northwestern, San Diego State, Yale, Duquesne, Morehead State, Washington State, and South Dakota State are the other teams there in that bracket. I guess as we go through it, maybe each region we'll just kind of say, who we think's coming out of that region, and then maybe who's a team that's, I guess we could give our Elite Eight picks for it, but then maybe who's a team that we kind of have an eye on that you think maybe will, surprise some people as well. So SJ, in that East, what are you kind of looking at there?
It seems like, again, I hate doing the chalk thing, but it's hard. It is really hard to pick against UConn. Just the body of work is there. They were one of the few higher ranked teams that didn't falter through their conference tournament when they were expected to win. So unlike the committee, we value the conference tournament, so that means something to us. So I'll take UConn. As far as the teams that I think, if there's going to be someone to knock them off, whoever gets out of that Sweet 16, I got Illinois and Iowa State. I think that they're on a collision course there. That should be a hell of a game too. Whoever wins that, I think, could potentially knock off UConn. So that would be who I look for. And then, of course, Auburn's gonna be tough for UConn to get by as well. The way they're playing right now, if I picked them as a dark horse in the SEC and then they win it, I gotta kind of carry that over the tournament. So that would be the two. But definitely that Illinois Iowa State winner, I could easily see them in making it to the Final Four.
Yeah, I'm with you. If I was a total homer, obviously I'd go with my Cyclone just because they're seem to be on a little bit of a good stride here right now. But once you get into the tournament, I think some of that conference stuff wears off, obviously a little bit. And UConn, they've done nothing to say that you shouldn't believe that they're going to do it again. I mean, they've just played so consistent throughout the year. And like I said on one of our previous shows, just seem to be one of those teams that has the pieces together. They've got players at all the positions in the different levels of the floor that make them good. And they're really good inside. And that's what's going to be tough, I think, for teams to stop because, Klingon is so good down there, down low. So, a team that's going to be tough to beat. So I'm thinking UConn is going to come out of there in that region. I'm with you. I think that potential Iowa State Illinois game could be a really fun game. The way that they're both playing right now, you would expect that to be a high kind of back and forth battle type of contest. And to your point before, Auburn is the hot name right now. If somebody I think was going to say that whoever's on a big heater, the way that they've been scoring would be kind of the team that gives UConn trouble because they're so explosive offensively there, which I don't think necessarily. Illinois is a little bit that way, but not consistently as much as Auburn probably is. And Iowa State, they're more of they're going to do it the defensive side. The offense is going to come with it a little bit, but it's going to be the defense that makes the difference there. So, yeah, those are the teams to kind of look out for. I really don't see any gigantic upsets in that region either. I do kind of think that Drake will probably knock off Washington State and get into that second game just because Drake's a pretty senior-laden type of team. They're experienced. They've done it. This is crazy. It's crazy what DeVries has done there. This is the 4th straight season they've won over 25 games, which is just incredible for a small school in Des Moines that nobody probably pays attention to. But and that could be fun. That would be fun to have Iowa State Drake because they don't get to play anymore the way that the regular season has been set up anymore, which people are, of course, pissed about that are fans of the smaller schools. But that would be interesting. And it would certainly make it for a great atmosphere. I think that's one thing that I'm looking forward to. If I do get a chance to sneak over there just to be around, there's going to be so many Iowa State fans and even Drake fans, too, that head to Omaha to make that a really fun regional. It should be cool to see that atmosphere because you don't always get it. You don't always get it in those first-round sites. So that's how it looks kind of there in the East. We'll move down the bracket. So this is be the same side of the bracket, would be the West Regional. North Carolina is the 1. They will play the winner of an opening round game between Howard and Wagner. The 8-9 game is Mississippi State against Michigan State. Then we've got St. Mary's as the 5 against the 12 Grand Canyon. 4 Alabama against the 13 Charleston. 5 Clemson against 11 New Mexico, 3 Baylor against the 14 Colgate, 7 Dayton against the 10 seed Nevada, and the 2 seeds Arizona against Long Beach State. I guess I'll lead this one off here. This sets up, I think, for another one of those really good Elite Eight games if it plays out the way I think it will. Carolina and Arizona. I know it's chalk again, but boy, those two teams, and they've got a little history between each other as well because, Caleb Love going over to Arizona. It's going to make for a fun little side storyline. Arizona's a really good balanced team. And North Carolina, like I said before, when they're firing on all cylinders, they look like a team that could win it all too. So that could be one heck of a knockdown drag out. I don't know. I've gone back and forth on that one a few times, and I think just because I didn't want to see so many ones around my my final bracket, I end up going with Arizona. I think Arizona maybe gets the better of them just because they do kind of have more of that explosive balance. Not to say that North Carolina doesn't have good players at different spots too, but the way that they lost that last game, Arizona, losing was disappointing, but I think there was a much bigger lack of focus for them in that tournament. They were kind of looking ahead, I think. So that'll be fun. But I'm giving Arizona the edge there. So that's how my Final Four shapes up, and unfortunately, I do kind of think the way this region sets up, it's going to kind of be chalky as far as the teams that get on to that Sweet 16 round. I don't see any real teams that are going to be the big ones that'll shake things up. I know people have talked about Grand Canyon being a kind of a fun team that might make a little bit of a splash if they could get hot. New Mexico is another team I've heard a little bit about as well, but I'm not seeing anything huge there. How about you?
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you there, and I think part of my thing with Arizona is just the way that the Pac-12 season and especially the tournament played out. Maybe that conference is a little better than we thought, and I think the ACC is maybe more top-heavy than anything, with the exception, of course, NC State went on the run, but that was just one run and not the whole season. They couldn't really be consistent with that. So I went Arizona as well to get out of there. This is sometimes you look for the upsets and say this or that, but it is going to be, I think, at least on paper, it's hard to prognosticate that. So I'm going chalky too. But I am one of those that likes New Mexico, especially against Clemson. And I think if they get that one, maybe they sneak by Baylor. So I think they might hit a Sweet 16 on that one. So I'm gonna roll with New Mexico as kind of maybe the only one to upset the cart there and make a little bit of run to the Sweet 16. But outside of that, I got Arizona over North Carolina in that region as well.
Yeah, I could see that happening. One thing I did see somebody mention, and of course they were arguing about, leagues versus league, which everybody loves to do once the field gets set. But they were talking, and I was a little bit surprised. I mean, they were talking about all these different matchups where early on in the season, a lot of ACC teams did win games against Big 12 teams, which, the Big 12 does get a lot of love a lot of times for, being one of the stronger leagues in the nation. Now, to me, though, part of that, too, is those games tend to happen, first 2 weeks of the season. I don't know, to me, especially in college hoops, I don't know how much you can take away from that. Everybody loves to give people credit for these huge wins early on in the season. And maybe it makes sense when it's a small school because you don't know what to expect from them. But from some of these other Power Fives, any day early on in the year when teams have yet to figure themselves out, you can probably get beat. So I really don't think that's all of that huge of a deal usually on, and not a great indicator of how it's going to be at the end of the day. But I did think it was interesting. So I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, obviously, once they step out onto the court here in the tourney. As we move on to the South, we've got the Houston Cougars coming off. I thought this was interesting. Coming off the biggest loss that a 1 seed has ever had going into the NCAA tournament. So let's see how they bounce back. They're playing Longwood as the 1-16 game. And then you got that 8-9 between Nebraska and Texas A&M, which we, of course, know was, real pinpointed from recent news. Wisconsin as the 5 seed taking on the 12 James Madison. The 4 seed Duke faces the 13 Vermont. The 6 Texas Tech will take on the 11 NC State. Kentucky is the 3. They'll take on the 14 Oakland. Florida, the 7. They'll play the winner of Boise State, Colorado in the 7-10 game. And then the 2 Marquette will take on the 15 Western Kentucky. So that's how that bracket matches up. SJ, what are you looking at here in the South?
Well, Again, try to avoid the chalk as much as possible. That's kind of the way I like to roll because we know it never plays out like we think it does. But even though they maybe were a little bit of a letdown for me in the at least our picks for the conference tournament, I think Kentucky is going to sneak by Houston in this bracket. Obviously, keep an eye on Marquette. I wouldn't obviously totally be surprised if Duke made a run, but I don't know. They just haven't really impressed me, and especially in the big games. It's kind of just it's hard to pick against them because of the name Duke. Because we've grown up and they were always a Sweet 16 guarantee, Elite Eight for sure, probably, and then a lot of times Final Four. So that's kind of the dilemma you're in these days with some of these teams. Duke, even at Kansas, is you see the name and you're like, how can I pick them to only win one or two games? But it's not the same Duke that it used to be. And it's just kind of how the game has changed. And obviously, lose a legendary coach, it's kind of hard to keep that momentum rolling. But Houston too, like I kind of like them, I kind of don't. Um, if it was I wasn't a fan of the team, I could see them getting that second round loss, but I can't be a homer. It's hard to get these emotions out of there. That's the tricky part. Like
Yeah.
I could literally see, it's Nebraska making the Sweet 16, but also it's hard to do that when they haven't won a tournament game before. So,
Yeah.
but you could just on looking at the game, you could see it happening. But I'm not going to pick it because I don't want to be a homer, and I'm trying to keep the emotions, like I said, out of it, and try to pick with your brain rather than your heart. So I'll do that for now, but I'm not going to be surprised if that does happen. I'll take Kentucky over Houston in that regional final, but this one, unlike the other ones, I could see four or five different teams coming out of this region.
Yeah, it is going to be an interesting one. I was kind of trying to look for, who's going to be the team that kind of surprises and upsets the apple cart, because there's going to be one, I think, here in this region. I will say that, even though Houston, took that lump there at the end, they still are such a good team. They when they're on, and that was one of the worst like shooting days that they've had in a long time too. You don't expect that every day from Shed and Cryer. I mean, those guys are going to make shots, so they'll be a tough team. Just because usually, when we talk tournament, it always comes down to a lot of times talking about the guard play, and they've got two really good ones. So I think that they probably get in that spot too. Unfortunately, I'm not making the show very interesting because I had the exact same thing written down on my sheet.
Well, we haven't seen our brackets, so it's
That's
just
true.
Great minds think alike, I guess.
Yeah.
And we'll probably both be wrong.
Both be very wrong, yeah.
I should be picking off color or something, mascot instead.
Yeah, I went the same thing. I went Kentucky over Houston in the final. I just think that Kentucky's kind of one of those teams that late in the season started to figure some things out. They were a young team, but they're figuring things out, and they play good offense. They can really score and kind of overcome in that way. And the big games that they won down the stretch, it kind of impressed me. Now, I do think that the Marquette team's really tough. They could be one that really shakes it up, and obviously, Shaka Smart's been there before, and he knows how to get his team to go in the tournament. So that certainly could be an upset the apple cart type of squad. The one team that I do have a little bit of an eye out here, and I might be riding the kind of bandwagon because I've heard some other people say this too, but I do think that James Madison team is pretty tough. You look at the way that they play and how they score up and down their lineup. They're a pretty balanced and deep team. Not to say that Wisconsin hasn't certainly been playing well here lately, so that's going to make for a really fun first-round game, I think. But I do think James Madison will maybe sneak up and pull that 5-12 upset we're always looking for in that game. And if they do that, I do think they're going to surprise one more time. I think they're going to knock off Duke and get to that Sweet 16. Just because Duke, I think they're similar to Kentucky in the fact that they're pretty young, but they've just been so much more shaky. They have those moments where it's like they get out of a game and you just don't think they're going to get back into it, and that's what happened when they played Carolina. So I think James Madison might be the surprise team there. So that was kind of what I was looking at. But like you said, even a team like Texas Tech, if they get hot at the right time, they could be one that makes a run. Florida, I mean, hell, they played well in the SEC. That's a tough bracket for sure. We move on down to the Midwest. And the top seed there is Purdue, one team that, of course, has been up towards the number one spot in the country a lot this season. So probably have, earned their way to that location. They'll take on the winner of an opening round game between Montana State and Grambling State. Grambling State, who's in for the first time ever. Utah State will take on TCU in the 8-9. The 5 is Gonzaga. They'll take on the 12 McNeese State. Kansas is the 4. They'll take on the 13 Samford. South Carolina, the 6, facing the 11 Oregon. The 3 seed Creighton taking on the 14 Akron. The 7 seed is Texas. They'll take on the winner of Virginia, Colorado State in the opening round. And then Tennessee, the 2 seed, takes on the 15 St. Peter's, of course, which has been one of the recent darlings of the tournament as well. So that's how the Midwest shapes up as far as the matchups. This is one too where, boy, when I saw this bracket, and I guess this was what made my blood boil a little bit more after I saw Iowa State's spot, and then I saw this Midwest region play out. I was kind of like, man, I would love for my team to be in this region, in this bracket, because there's so much uncertainty with the top teams in this one. I mean, you talk about Kansas as a 4. That's about as weak as a 4 you're going to get right now, just because they're so beat up and you don't know what you're going to get out of them at all. And then obviously Creighton has shown that they're streaky. I mean, when they shoot well, they're really, really tough to beat. But when they don't, are they going to be able to hang on? Tennessee, who looked like they were unbeatable, then obviously stumbled and didn't look that great in the SEC tournament. So yeah, just a lot of question marks, I think, for these top teams here, and of course Purdue. You just don't. We already talked about them. So, but at the end of the day, I think when you've got a guy that's friggin' 7 foot and and you got some pretty good players around him, you're gonna find a way to make it a little ways in this tournament. So I think Purdue's gonna get to this final, but I'm gonna go. I have a hard time figuring out who's going to be the team that comes out of this, and I think I'm probably going to end up being wrong. I think this is where there's going to be a weird seed that gets in to the Final Four, but I ended up going with Tennessee just because of Dalton Knecht and the way that he's played throughout the year. Just a guy, kind of a dynamic player. They've got a lot of shooters. They kind of run and gun, fun type of team. Rick Barnes obviously has the experience. So that's the team that I'm looking at there. But, I'm afraid of a lot of teams and how they could go on a run. I mean, you look at Oregon and the way that they've been on a little bit of a nice late season stretch here. Of course, they worked out that potential, Oregon-Creighton matchup potentially there in the second round, which is the fun storyline. Interesting. Even there's been a lot of talk, too, about Colorado State and Virginia, the winner of that game. They're both pretty tough teams. They could get, and I don't have any faith in Texas, so I think they're going to get beat by whoever wins that game. But interesting. The one little dark horse I'm going to throw out there for this region, McNeese State. They're a pretty balanced team. Now they're playing a team that sure knows how to play in the tournament in Gonzaga, so that makes it a little bit tougher. But I think they're the surprise team here, and because of where they're at. I think they get to the Sweet 16 because I don't trust Kansas to win any more than one game here, but just because of how beat up they are. They just don't have the depth at all. And McNeese State, that's what they're known for. They have huge depth. They've got a lot of guys that they play. So that's the one I'm looking. What do you got going on there in the Midwest?
Again, we're not too different when it comes to the end game, but I had to stop myself and I almost picked every damn higher or. Well, I guess it depends how you look at it. Higher seed, lower seed. I almost picked the 12s, the 13s, 11s. I almost picked all of them. It was hard to not do it.
Yeah.
Kind of end up basically the biggest upset I came across. I think Kansas. I think they're out. I'm taking Samford to pull the upset there in the first round. I guess South Carolina as a 6 and Gonzaga as a 5, which take it for what you will. I got them both in the Sweet 16, and if I knew if it was Colorado State for sure that would take out Virginia, I would have picked them to beat Texas. But not knowing who's going to win that first game, I just stuck with Texas. And I like you, I like Tennessee to face off against Purdue in that regional final, but Purdue to take it. This is going to be, like I said before, I'm going to be one of those positive guys that thinks it's finally Purdue is going to live up to that number by their name and maybe make a run here to the Final Four. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But this is you could see any number of teams making it out of that region, and then even just to the Sweet 16, it could be some 6, 7, 5s, even an 8 or a 9 that makes a run there. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so at least we both of us have a couple, or at least one seed in there. You got a couple one seeds sitting there. Last year was the first time ever that we didn't have a one seed in the Final Four. So obviously, pretty likely that that will happen again here this year with one of those ones making it through, and maybe more than one. So yeah, it'll be it's going to be fun. There's some definitely some uncertainty, and I think especially on that side of the bracket, it's so weird. I guess when I look at it, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like on that left side with that East and West regions, there's way more teams that I think could win this whole thing that are coming off that side. Whether it be UConn, whether it be Arizona, whether it be North Carolina, those are the kind of teams I'm looking at that maybe could win the whole damn thing, and they're all on that same side of the bracket. So that leads us down to our Final Four, obviously, so we'll go ahead and take a look at that. I guess I maybe kind of tipped my hand, but I do. It's probably not going to happen just because it's so hard to do. But I got to go with the team that won it last year. I'm going with UConn. I think that they beat Arizona in that Final Four game. They get there, and then I've got Kentucky winning that other game to take on UConn in the final, and I'm going to go UConn to win it. I just think there's too much balance and too much consistency for that UConn squad. Really hard to do, but that's what I'm going with. How about you?
Yeah, that was kind of why I didn't end up picking them. I have UConn in the final, but just as hard as it is to repeat, I couldn't see it. And I guess I'm gonna look like a dumbass probably, but I'm gonna think Purdue's gonna get it done.
There you go. Yeah.
It's not anything to do with liking them, being a fan or anything. I think they like you said, when you got that freaking space eater solar eclipse right there, man. It's hard to freaking just to stop that and get on a run. And they got some pretty damn good guards too and shooters on top of that. So yeah, I think they're maybe built to take it all this year, but it's March Madness for a reason. So we're probably going to be way off here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that I think Purdue's a team that's capable of it for sure, and it has been interesting to see. Edey's progression a little bit, because obviously he just got a bunch of love because he's just that huge. But he has gotten a lot better at the touch game. I mean, the guy's pretty good in the paint. You get him the ball just on, being able to get it up in different ways and work around all those guys that are always trying to push him around, because that's what they can do. But yeah, he's definitely taking it a step up this season for sure.
Yeah, he's not just a catch and dunk guy anymore. Like he can, go out a little bit, and even his free throw game. I mean, he's pretty consistent from the foul line too, which you're going to get a lot of foul calls in his situation.
Yeah. Should be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it. We will follow along the tournament, of course, the whole way through. And as we go through on certain days, if we're feeling something as a certain play that we like, obviously these lines will start to come out as far as the totals and all that good stuff here too. So follow us along on social media, and we'll send those out to you. His handle on Twitter is at SJMBets. I'm at CherokeeCP. SJ usually does a great job of putting together a little graphic for us, and then he'll send it out, and I'll put it out there, retweet it out there for you as well, so you can see what we're doing and thinking each day and make some plays. If you would like to, of course, send some ideas our way, we'd certainly appreciate that as well. And then also, I guess I'll throw it out there for you. This is something I created a long time ago. I have been running a pool that had a name from a show that we started back in the college days. Full Court Press was the program back on KLPR, and it's always been the Full Court Press pool. Now, I did go ahead and say that the baton has been passed, and I changed the name to the Everyday We're Covering Pool, just so folks know. And when they find it, they're finding the right thing. So change the name. The history's still there, so if you want to go look, how things have gone in the past, you can do that. But if you want to look that up, so it's through CBS Sports. I've always used the CBS Sports Line site to do so. So if you go to CBS Sports, search for Everyday We're Covering Pool, and then the password, if you want to get into it, has always been onions with an exclamation point, because we love Bill Raftery dropping some onions here, getting some teams crying here in the tournament, and always makes it fun. So yeah, and we'll put that out there for you too on social, so you know that and can reference that. But we'd love for everybody to get involved. There is some, financial incentive in there too. So you'll find the details once you get in there. But yeah, you would get involved and of course, then we tend to, what I've done in the past is top three of the pool get some spoils. So the last guy will get, his stuff back, and then we ramp it up from there depending on how many get in. So we certainly hope some people do, and that would be fun. A little side something for us to talk about here on the program as well. We always love that.
Yeah, I mean it's easy to say call us out when we lose, but kind of put your money where your mouth is there, and join in on the fun. It's like we said though. I mean it's kind of fun too. It's like a good thing that it's one of those things where it doesn't really matter. Like the less you know, the better. So
Yeah.
like CP said, get the info and try your hand at this, and you'll see it's not as easy as it sounds.
All right. Well, we hope that you've got the imprint in the couch ready to go. We hope you got the TVs all set up and locked and loaded, and you're ready for some March Madness. I know we are. We appreciate you joining us here on the program. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next week for some more covers.